The White House opened its eyes. Trust me, that changes everything you thought you knew about the trade war. Here's what I am seeing at the moment. The Trump administration has been telling everyone for the past year that tariffs were a tool used against other countries. Now, behind closed doors, they are quietly taking back some of those tariffs. Not just any taxes either. The 50% levies on steel and aluminum were meant to be the most important part of this whole economic plan. The step that was supposed to bring back industry, punish China, and keep American workers safe. One of those rules is being rolled back. Before I tell you what's really going on and why it's bigger than most people are saying, let me show you the picture that's been in my head ever since this story broke this morning. Let's say you go to the store and pick up a bake pan, a can of soup, and a pack of soda. You're gonna make brownies this weekend. You know, deep down, that everything costs more now than it did 2 years ago. You're not making it up. You're not making a scene. Now, we have proof from government experts that every time you use one of those things, you are paying a hidden tax. Not China or a factory in another country. But this is where things get tricky. The government isn't announcing a loss. There won't be a news conference where they say, "We got it wrong." Things are getting more delicate and in some ways more telling. Sources now report that the White House has been telling businesses in a quiet way that changes are being made to the metal tariffs. A study is going on. Some things, like baking pans, food cans, and drink cans, will not have to follow the rules. There will be no more growth of the tariff list. Instead, there will be more focused investigations into national security. That sounds like a policy change, a technical fix, or some kind of bureaucratic fine-tuning at first glance. Don't believe what they say, though. We're really seeing a political decline, which is being driven by numbers that are too big to ignore. The people who work for Trump in the Commerce Department and the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative are said to have admitted within the government that the tariffs hurt American customers. That's not what the rival party said. Of course, that's not a left think tank. When trade officials from the government look at the numbers, they say, "This isn't working the way we told the public it would work." The numbers they're looking at are shocking. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York just released a study, and I'm going to talk about it for a long time because it's important. It found that U.S. businesses and consumers paid nearly 90% of the costs of tariffs in 2025. This wasn't foreign companies, Chinese manufacturers, or the Canadian steel industry. It was American families and small businesses. Take a moment to think about that. The whole point of this trade war, both politically and ideologically, was that other countries would pay. That the money would come in from America and be taken care of by a business in Shanghai or Ontario. That's what was promised. That's what was sold at protests, on Facebook, and in newspaper editorials. The Fed now says, no, you paid it the whole time. You paid it every time you bought something in a can, every time you replaced an appliance, and every time you ordered something that came in a metal container. But what I'm about to show you changes everything, because this isn't just about steel and aluminum. This slow, quiet retreat behind the scenes is the first sign that the administration's economic plan is breaking down in a much bigger way. You'll have a very different view of this once you know what's really going on, the numbers we're about to see, and the growing political pressure from within Trump's own party. Stay with me because the fun is just beginning. There are hard numbers on the table. I believe the picture is almost impossible to defend when these numbers are put together, not spread out in different papers, but right here next to each other. Start with the study from the New York Fed. The researchers looked at detailed customs data that went back to November 2025. Based on what they found, almost 90% of the tariff costs were borne by U.S. businesses and customers. That number was 94% just in the first 8 months of the year, from January to August. Let me say that again. Companies and families in the United States paid 94% of the economic cost of these tariffs, not foreign exporters or the countries Trump was going after. Out of every $5 tax bill, $4 went back to the United States. There is no bias in this study either. The New York Federal Reserve Bank is not a party group. These people work as economists and are doing what economists do. After looking at trade data, running statistical models, and taking into account changes in world prices, they came to a conclusion that is the exact opposite of what the American people have been told for over a year. They said it was true. The German Kiel Institute also came to the same conclusion. 96% of the costs are paid for by U.S. customers and importers. It's the same story with the Congressional Budget Office. Exporters from other countries only paid about 5% of the cost of tariffs. It gets worse now. The Nonpartisan Tax Foundation did the math to show what this means for your family. In 2025, Trump's tariffs meant that each American family had to pay an extra $1,000 in taxes. That amount goes up to $1,300 per family in 2026, which is this year. Some families don't feel that way, though. If you make more than $1,000, there was a mistake in the math, but $300 is a car payment for a middle-class family in Ohio, Alberta, or Michigan. It's enough food for a month. Real money is leaving your pocket because of a strategy that was sold to you as a way to fight other countries. Now, the government is looking at the list of products that will be hit with 50% metal tariffs, and seems to be shocked to see that it has grown into something totally out of control. It is now said that officials think the tariff system has become too complicated to manage. Remember this phrase? That's what a government worker said. The policy has become so big, complicated, and full of loopholes and additions made by lobbyists that the government's trade officials can't handle it well. If you want to know how that happened, read on. This is what kept me up last night. The way it works is like this. Companies in the U.S. have been able to ask the Commerce Department to put duties on foreign products that compete with their own in the steel and aluminum markets. The reason given is national security, but what began as a valid policy tool has changed into something else. Manufacturers in the United States have been trying to get taxes put on anything made of metal, even bicycle parts. I'm not making this up. And because the Commerce Department seemed to be quickly agreeing to most of these requests in order to push Trump's tariff plan, a huge number of household items, such as food and drink cans, cake pans, and washing machines, now have a 50% tariff on the metal parts that make them up. That's not a plan for national security. That's a tax on the American shopping cart. But this is what no one is talking about. This isn't just a problem for politics in the United States. In trade talks with partners, it also makes things a lot harder. Sources state that the European Union has pointed out the tariffs on steel and aluminum derivatives as a problem in the trade talks that are still going on between the EU and the US. Right now, the U.S. Trade Representative's office is working hard to fix the problems that this tariff increase caused by being rolled out too fast and without much thought. People who make things that go through this metal tariff framework export them to the UK, Canada, Mexico, and EU member states, so those countries stand to gain from what is being looked at. So Trump's own trade officials are saying that the strategy is too hard to understand. The Federal Reserve says that 90% of the bill was paid by Americans. The Tax Foundation says that the typical family lost between $1 and $300 this year. Now, in secret, the White House is looking over which things to leave out. Now, here's the important part. A rollback, even a small one, has effects that go far beyond soda cans and baking pans. Now for the trick that most people missed. Because of what I've already told you, the numbers from the Federal Reserve, the costs for households, and the product exemptions, none of that would necessarily force the government to do something. For more than a year, that kind of criticism of the economy has been going around Washington. What's different now? What's new this week? The House of Representatives is the right answer. Just 2 days ago, on Wednesday, something really unusual happened in this government. About 60 Republicans in the House voted with almost all of the Democrats to pass Joint Resolution 72. What is the point of that resolution? It aims to end the national emergency order that Trump used as an excuse to put tariffs on Canada in the first place. 6 Republicans voted with Democrats against a program that their own president has made famous. Just think about what a Republican in this Congress would have to do to pull that off. Right now, think about how much it would hurt your political career to go against Trump. Still, 6 of them did it. This wasn't a fringe group either. This was a rebuke from both parties that passed, even though the White House made threats against lawmakers in the days before the vote. In a straight quote, Trump wrote that Republicans who are against tariffs will really pay for it in the next election. But this is where things get tricky. It's because 6 Republicans still voted against him, even though that threat was still there. That 6th number tells you a story. In other words, it shows that there is a real crack appearing under the surface of Republican unity on trade. one that is not based on ideology, but on what Republican lawmakers hear from people in their areas. The costs of groceries, making things, metal prices that hurt small businesses, and people who are beginning to see the links between the news about tariffs and the numbers on their receipts, which is why the decision today to lower tariffs is based on that crack. This is not a moral decision, an economic epiphany, or a fight for political survival. What I'm about to show you changes everything even more because the midterm elections are coming up and the White House is changing how they think about politics. There are reports that about 52% of Americans now think Trump's business policies have made things worse. That's most of them. Not by much, but by a large margin. And the fact that 60% of people don't like tariff policy in particular is a number that makes minds at campaign offices glow. As an abstract symbol of economic nationalism, steel tariffs might make sense. But when they become $300 a year for each family, the symbol no longer works when your voters are feeling it at the register. Then this took place. The government began making exceptions. In the beginning, it was some imported foods. Now it's goods made from metals. And the government is calling it a targeted national security policy. Instead of keeping these long lists, they are looking into specific goods. Let's be clear about what that reshaping is, though. It means that everyone agrees that the policy's original reach was too broad, that it hurt the wrong people. Those common market goods were caught in a dragnet that was made for something else. That's not even the whole story. The real story is the judicial threat that this whole tariff structure poses. The Supreme Court of the United States is currently considering a case that could overturn the administration's right to use the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to apply tariffs. This is the legal basis for most of these levies. Two lower courts have already said that the government is wrong. One of those decisions was confirmed by the Federal Circuit. In November, the Supreme Court heard oral arguments. A choice is likely to be made in 2026, or even this year. If the Supreme Court decides against the government, the tariff framework not only gets weaker, it falls apart. And here's what happens to the money. If the tariffs are thrown out, the U.S. government might have to pay back American businesses as much as $18 billion, according to the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. It's not a rounding mistake. That's an earthquake in the budget. So the administration is dealing with a political backlash from its own members, a drop in support for its main economic policy, a study from the Federal Reserve showing that Americans are paying the bills they said foreigners would pay, and a Supreme Court case that could destroy the legal basis of its trade war. Taking back some taxes on baking pans doesn't seem like an improvement in policy. It looks more like a controlled retreat in the face of pressure. What does this mean for us now? I believe there are several things going on at the same time that are simple to miss if you only look at one part of the story at a time. Let me try to paint a full picture for you. First, the action right away. The reverse that is being talked about today is narrow and specific. It includes products made from metal that aren't the main ingredient, like food and drink cans and baking pans. The metal is only a small part of the product, but a 50% tax on it was making it more expensive. These are not the duties on structural steel. There is no change to the main 50% rate on steel and aluminum imports, at least not in the present talks. The headline, "Trump rolls back tariffs," is exactly correct, but it needs more information. The fixed rates are still in place. Some of the taxes on products further down the line get lowered. This is important for producers in Canada and Europe in particular. A big chunk of the goods that are affected by the derivative product taxes come from countries that are friendly with the US and not hostile. The United States buys items made from aluminum and steel from Canada, the UK, Mexico, and EU member states. A partial rollback here would be good for those trade ties. This is also important for the ongoing trade talks between the EU and other countries, where these tariffs have been named as a problem. But now, for the more important question. What does this tell us about the future of trade strategy as a whole? And I think the honest answer is that we are seeing the start of a planned withdrawal. Not a complete change of course or giving up on using tariffs as an economic weapon, but a recalibration caused by three forces at the same time: political, legal, and economic. The midterms are coming up in politics. People in the areas of Republicans who voted for these tariffs are putting pressure on them. This week's bill passed by both parties in the House was more than just a show of support. It was a warning sign. It says that 6 members are already ready to go against the president on this, and that number can grow to 12 or 20 if people keep making it clear that affordability is the most important issue to them going into the next election cycle. The case in the Supreme Court is the wild card. The government doesn't know for sure how that decision will turn out. If the court takes away the president's power to set tariffs for the EPA, the trade war structure will be thrown out, including not only the steel and aluminum part, but also China's and Canada's taxes. It's likely that the government is planning for all possible outcomes right now. By quietly lowering some tariffs before a possible court ruling, they can lock in some of the policy gains before they could be completely wiped out by a Supreme Court decision. And the numbers are just bad for the economy. It looks like a lot of money, $287 billion in tax money. But when the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office tells you that 70% of that cost goes straight to customers in the form of higher prices, it's hard to make the case for revenue. That money isn't coming from people outside of your country. This year, $1,300 per family is what you're getting from your own voters, during a time when most Americans are already worried about how to pay their bills. What I'm about to say has nothing to do with politics. It's an observation of a trend. Keep an eye on what happens with trade policy whenever it hits a big wall. China trade truce. Canada gets a scolding from both parties, some products are excluded, and steel and aluminum derivatives are reviewed and rolled back. Things look risky in the intensification phase. The economic reality phase comes after the sustained execution phase, and the manager break is seen as a chance to improve strategy. It brought in $287 billion for the government last year. The average tax rate on goods coming into the U.S. went from 2.6% to 13% in just 2025. You can count on those numbers, but the cost of getting that money, $1,000 for each family in 2025, $1,300 this year, is also real. This is now the point where the political cost of higher prices for consumers is higher than the political benefit of the tax as a sign of toughness. This is what I believe is most important looking forward, what the Supreme Court said. That one event might make everything different. If the court supports the president's power, the trade war will have a legal basis, and the changes that are being made now only seem like tactical ones. If the court throws it out and says that IEPA doesn't allow tariffs, we will be in totally new territory. There were tariff refunds, a lot of wrangling in Congress, a possible reorganization of the whole trade system, and a government that staked its economic future on a legal theory that the highest court in the country just shot down. That choice is on the way, and when it does, this story, which already seems very big, will get even bigger. I'll be keeping a close eye on this and let you know what happens. What do you think about this problem, though? This is one of those things where reasonable people really do come to very different conclusions. What do you think about this trade program now that you have facts? If you looked at those numbers and saw that watering a lawn costs $300 this year, would that change your mind about whether the taxes are worth it? Or do you believe that the long-term plan for manufacturing is worth the short-term pain? What do you think will happen next? I'm really interested. Share your thoughts below.